Hello, my name is Felsi. Welcome to Stirred Up. This is my first video in English because some of my English friends asked me to speak English and that they can understand as well. So I will, every now and then, I will speak English in my video. This time I would like to tell you a little bit about my story, which I've written down in my book Angeeckt 3 years ago. And this is a very, very emotional book because I'm a very emotional person. And I don't know if it will be sometimes come out in English. So I will tell you a little bit now about my story. I came to the point when I was 19 years old that I felt I don't fit into this society. I didn't see any sense in life. I started my apprenticeship working as a shop assistant in a gift shop where you could buy all sorts of gifts and all sorts of presents for people and like fluffy animals and cups and yeah, basically anything you wanted. And I worked there for half a year and I felt this is so pointless. I didn't see any sense. I did not see any sense in my life. I was thinking, I escape, I break out of this. So I ran away from home because I was still living at my parents at this time. And I traveled to Germany to a friend. And my parents did not know for a whole night where I was because I only phoned them the next day. So they were, of course, totally freaking out. But this was my way to say, I do not want to live like this. I do not want to have my life in this sort of routine which I didn't even enjoy. And I said to my parents, I would like to start to work in a heavy metal rock shop. And I knew my parents would never allow this, and this is why I ran off, because I wanted to basically force my parents into this to agree with my decision that I could skip my apprenticeship. And my parents, of course, they were, especially my mother, would agree to anything. Just she wanted me to come home again. So after a week, I came back home and I started working in a heavy metal shop because I was at this time of my life, and I still love rock music and heavy metal music, and so I really enjoyed working and I sold heavy metal records and I enjoyed the music which I could listen to the whole day. And I started to find my friends in the punk scene and in the rock scene. And basically I looked for people who also were rebellious, like I was, because I was not wanting to live this sort of normal life, because it was for me not exciting enough and it was no challenge for me. So I was hanging out with my punk friends, often in the parks, and at night we would go into clubs and we would have a good time. And my parents did not agree with my lifestyle at all, because I started after a couple of months stopped working, and I just was hanging out with my punk friends. And yeah, one day I started working also for a rock band, and I had friends in the rock scene, which I loved. But then, unfortunately, the band split, and then I was really, really starting to feel really sad and really, it seemed my world fell apart. And exactly at this time, I was still hanging out with my punk friends. I heard my parents, without knowing me, without them knowing that I would listen to them, that I listened to them. I heard them speaking about me, and they said they basically were thinking of throwing me out from home because they were at the end, with me. They just didn't know how to handle my behavior anymore, because I hated any sort of authority in my life, and I did not speak to my father anymore, and I was simply incredibly rebellious against any authorities. But this has given me such a fright when I heard my parents thinking about throwing me out from home, because I had no idea where to go. And I felt so alone. I felt so desperate. I felt so fearful. I've never felt so fearful in my life. And the next morning, my parents were they went out, they were not at home. I was alone by myself, and I started crying. I was crying, and suddenly, without even planning, I suddenly cried to God. I cried, God, please help me. And the next second, because I thought if anyone can help me, then it's God. And the next second, I heard a voice in my heart, but it was so clear. It was like, go to a Bible school. And I had no idea where a Bible school was in Austria. So I looked in a telephone book and I searched for if I could find a Bible school, but there was absolutely, I couldn't find anything. So I found a Protestant church person, which I found in a Bible, not in a Bible, in the telephone book. And yeah, and he said, yeah, there's a Bible school 3 hours away from Vienna. And he gave me the address and the telephone number and all the contact details, and I contacted the Bible school there. And basically I went from all my surrounding, with my rebellious attitude, I went to a Bible school a couple of months later. And I was not looking forward to go to a Bible school at all, because I was thinking I expected the worst. I was thinking this is now some sort of a horrible surrounding. This is gonna be, and this is perhaps I'm not gonna get proper food. There's perhaps only water and bread there for the students to eat and just to be. I had this expectation that it would be some sort of a castle, where you just pray, and there's like what you can see in the films often, where it's really dry and horrible. But I was thinking, okay, if this is God's answer, I just go. But then the Bible school was actually nice, and it was not how I expected it to be, and the teachers were nice, and the students, and they were, really, I felt a peace in this whole, it was in a castle, the Bible school, an Austrian castle. And it was the whole castle was filled with a peace which I've never ever experienced before. I mean, I did not fit in at all. I was wearing leather jackets, tight pants, black boots. I had my silver jewelry with skulls, and I was absolutely not fitting in. I was really sticking out at the Bible school. And also out inside as well, because I did not have the attitude of the other Bible school students, because they were all having their life was sorted out, they were looking forward to go to the Bible school. I was not looking forward to it, I was so totally different, and I was somehow totally heartbroken, because I was so at the end, with my life, and they didn't seem to have any problems, and I seemed so full of problems, and I seemed so full of difficulties with my life, and one reason I could even go to that Bible school is my parents. They were immediately like into my idea to go to the Bible school. They were thinking, oh, maybe this is gonna be helpful for me, and my father paid all the Bible school, the cost, because it was for half a year. I had to live in this castle and study the Bible. And because I liked the other students and I liked the teachers, I was sort of open for the message. And I knew God. I was always believing in God. But I did not have a relationship to Jesus, because I had no idea what does it mean. Jesus died on the cross for me, and I knew he died on the cross, but I had absolutely no connection. What does it mean for my life? What does this mean? And so I was getting a bit used to the life in the Bible school. And there was one evening, the director of the Bible school was preaching, and there were guests in the house because they were offering seminars, and it was always, this time the house was totally packed full. And there was one evening, there was another seminar starting, and the Bible school students were also invited to come. And I was sitting in the last row because it already started, I was a bit late. And I listened, and I was thinking, I didn't expect anything major, but I was thinking, okay, if this is now another preaching from the director. I liked the director too. He was always a really funny guy. He always made jokes. And this time he looked really serious, and he said, yeah, we all need a relationship with Jesus. And that's why God has made us. That's why we are created, because God wants to have a relationship with us. And he doesn't want us to go to church every Sunday and that's it. He wants a real relationship. And this is something I've never heard before, and I had absolutely no idea. And he said yes, and the demons are also believing in God, and they shiver. So it's not enough just to believe somehow, in God. He wants a relationship because he loves us so much. And I heard those sentences, and I sort of started to think of my friends. And I was thinking, all my friends, they don't have a relationship with God. They don't know God. And I thought, when they die and they haven't known God, this is horrible, and they're not with Jesus, they're not saved, and I started to understand somehow the connection. That Jesus is our Savior, and we need Him. We need Him to live and to die. And so I started to feel suddenly really sick. I felt so sick suddenly that I had to jump up because I thought I have to vomit. I have to rush to a toilet. And I rushed to a toilet close to my room, where my room was, where I stayed. And I thought I have to vomit, and I wanted to throw up, and in this moment I broke down, I collapsed. I fell on the floor and I was unconscious. And then suddenly I opened my eyes and I saw a light suddenly, which was so bright. And it was like I've never seen such a light before. And then I saw that I was lying. There were suddenly some feet in front of my eyes, and I saw a tiny bit of a white clothing and brown sandals. And I could not move, so I could not turn my head to see. But I knew in this moment I was lying in front of Jesus, because I knew this was Him. This was with His feet. I recognized His feet. And my first thought was, I was thinking, I'm dead, because I must be now dead, because there's Jesus in front of me. And I was saying, Jesus, am I dead now? And Jesus, I heard His voice, and He said, no, you are not dead. And I felt this voice was so serious, and I could feel His love. I could not see His face, but I could feel His power, and I could feel that He has the power to take my life away now, or He has the power over my life. I felt this power, and I felt the love, this incredible love. I could even feel His love in His voice, and I saw this light, this incredibly bright, shiny light, and I knew this was Him. He was this light was coming from Him. And He said, no, you're not dead. And then He said, there is, and then He said the names of three boys, 3 men in my life, which I was really looking up to, which I adored totally. And He said, they are in your heart, they're still there. And then I opened my eyes again, and Jesus was gone. And I was lying there on the floor, and I got up slowly, and there were some girls knocking on the door from the outside, because they must have heard me falling, and I ran out, and I ran into my room, and I jumped into my bed, because I was thinking, I've just seen Jesus, I've just spoken to Jesus, I've seen His feet. I was so overwhelmed. And from this moment on, I knew Jesus is alive. He's alive. He's risen from the dead. And he's there. And it's true, he is totally real. And I was so overwhelmed. And I did not know, I could not tell anyone. And I didn't really understand what He meant, and I was thinking, and I was so overwhelmed that I've seen Jesus that I traveled home for 1 week from the Bible school, and I said to my teachers and to my students, I'm sick, I go home. And so they all thought I've escaped. I ran away from the Bible school, and they really prayed for me to come back. And of course I always intended to come back, but I was for a week at home lying in my bed and was thinking about this experience to see Jesus. And after a week, I went back to the Bible school, and all the students, they were so relieved, to see me again. And yeah, and they had prayed for me so much, and it was just so, I felt so welcomed. And then a couple of days later, there was one teacher, my favorite Bible school teacher, and he said, Felsi, do you know that you are a child of God? And I had no idea if I'm a child of God or not. And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm a child of God. I didn't even know what a child of God really was. But I did not want to ask either, because I was thinking everyone here knows what a child of God is. So I do not want to even ask. And then then he said, okay, can you, I think it was one day, a couple of days later, he wanted to see me in his apartment, because he lived in the castle at this time. And then he did read some Bible verses to me, and I came up with a friend of mine, with a student, and he said, Felsi, Jesus died on the cross, to save everyone who believes in him, this Bible verse. And then he was also, one of the verses was, he's knocking on the doors of our hearts, that we open our hearts for him. And this verse has so touched me. And he said, Felsi, do you want to live with Jesus? And I was, of course, I was so happy, of course I want to live with Jesus, and then I prayed with my teacher together, and I invited Jesus into my heart. And suddenly I felt a real peace in my heart, which I've never felt before. And I felt this love, and I felt my life, with Jesus. I have hope for my life, everything is going to turn out awesome, with Jesus, because he's not going to let me down, and he's never going to, he's always going to be there, and he's going to help me through my problems. And I knew that my life had suddenly a meaning, because before I thought it's so without any sense for me, it's no meaning there. And with Jesus in my life, I felt in my heart my life has a meaning, because I'm living with Jesus now. And then after I finished the Bible school, I went back to Vienna. And in Vienna, I had hardly any Christian friends. I didn't know any Christians. And I knew the two people from the Bible school who lived also in Vienna, and the other students lived in Germany. So I was totally alone. I had absolutely no other people who believed in Jesus. But I had this joy in my heart, and I had this excitement for Jesus, And so I told my friends, I told my friends from the punk scene, and I went to them and said, you need to believe in Jesus. He is so awesome, and he's alive, and I've given my life to Jesus, And I spoke to everyone, to my friends, about Jesus. And at this time, I had a friend which I really liked, and he was also one of the three people I really adored, which Jesus had mentioned there. And I thought, okay, Jesus wants me to talk to those three boys, especially about him. And one of them was, at this time, I was really in love. He was my lover. And I was telling him so much about Jesus. And I was like, I could not stop, And I think I needed also someone, I could share my excitement, I could share I was so overwhelmed, and every day I felt Jesus was close. I felt my relationship was growing, and I had no other people who believed in God around me. And this was a time where I really still I felt God is giving me strength, and He loves me so much, and this love is growing, And so I was I had this these were all people from the rock scene, which I really really liked, and my lover were with at the moment, he was a rock singer. And so I was just telling him about Jesus, and every time I saw him, I was saying, hey, and the things I found out, and I brought him tapes from the Bible school to listen to, and it was really hardcore, and it was really really like I think this was something in my life which I will never forget, because I started living with Jesus there, and the rock singer, he was saying, what is this with you? You are so sure. What is this? He just couldn't quite. And I said, yes, of course, I'm totally sure, because Jesus is alive. It's all true. And then I started to be with a church, and I started to find a Christian group in Germany, which is called Jesus Freaks, and they were also really, really, really burning for Jesus and living for Jesus. And there I could grow more in God, I could know Jesus much more better every day, and my faith developed really strong, and it was really, really cool time. And then I still did not really know what did Jesus mean, with the three men in my heart, which I so adore. And 4 years later, I found the answer, and I was reading a book, a preaching book. It was a book from David Wilkerson, and he was just writing down his thoughts to certain Bible verses, and there was one chapter he wrote, like he wrote about Jesus wants to be in our heart, number one, because he wants us to love him with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength and our mind, and he just loves us so much that he wants our love back. And I always thought I had no worth before I met Jesus. I thought I have absolutely no worth, I can do nothing, I'm not good enough for anyone, I just had those sort of thoughts. And then when I gave my life to Jesus, I felt, for Jesus, I have worth. And he loves me so much that he wants me to love him back. And because it's a love relationship, with Jesus. And there I suddenly realized he wants to be in my heart, number one. And he just didn't know, he knew. I know that Jesus knew. I was in that moment where I saw him, where I had this conversation with him, I was not ready to hear this from him, because I was so not even living with him, and I had just started to know him. But 4 years later, I was totally ready for him to speak to me again through this book and to say, Felsi, I want to be number one in your heart. And this was just so cool, so cool to hear. And it's for everyone, that's for every one of us, what Jesus wants from us is that he wants to be our number one. Because when he is our number one in our heart, then we can love other people like we have never loved them before, because we have the love from Jesus, and we are not dependent upon people's love anymore, because we can still love people even when they are not nice to us. And one thing how I changed as well, I changed when I met Jesus, and when I started living with Jesus, I could suddenly love people again. And there were certain people I could not love anymore, because I hate those people, there were a lot of people which I simply hated. And with Jesus, I suddenly felt love. I could not hate anyone anymore. And this was also, it was so new. And the relationship to my father was slowly starting to get better. And Jesus has picked up broken pieces in my life, and fixed them. And this is, Jesus always wants to fix broken things in your life. He wants to help you to live a fulfilled life, and to live a life which is worth, which has worth and which has a meaning. And this is my message for today. And I wanted to say to you, Jesus loves you, and he reaches out for you, and you are so special for him and to him, and he wants you to open your heart for him. And see you next time again. Yours Felsi. Bye.